Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on Porch Time today. Man, after the eclipse, I tell you, it is hot. It's just, I don't know what the deal is, but it's hot today. Man, it's hot. But, I gotta mention this. Everybody keeps talking about my spider back here. You know, this spider, I don't know if I can get where you can see it or not. It's kind of hard to, everybody keeps saying, is it real? Yeah, it's real. You can see it, it's back there, it's real, it's moving around. I don't know if I can get over enough that you can actually see it. But anyway, I'll leave him back there. We've named it Eva. There's a couple of people that'll know why. But it's named Eva. It doesn't do any harm. It sits there, it catches bugs all the time. So we leave it alone. They're actually a friendly spider to have. But on Porch Time today, I want to kind of break away from where we've been going with the Cherokees and stuff for one of my Porch Times, because I've been reading a magazine. I subscribe to different magazines, or let me put it this way, I get sent subscriptions to different magazines. I very seldom subscribe to anything. They send them to me. And you know, some of them are good and some of them are not good. But this particular one, I really enjoyed the series. It's called The Backwoodsman. It's a real good magazine. It's got a lot of good information in it about survival and different things you do out in the wild or the wilderness, or just if a life-changing event takes place. It's got a lot of good info in it. But this particular one this month had an article in it, had to deal with homesteading, and I thought that was unusual. Now, this particular article happens to touch on something that I've been touching on for quite some time. I just never have said it in these words, but I'm going to talk about this article. I'm going to use some of their words. The name of it is Homesteading, Are You Tough Enough? And guys, that's one of the things that I've been trying to do, is to portray over to you all the lifestyle of being what I'm calling a true homesteader. It's really a tough life. And the thing I've been trying to portray across is just this very message here. Are you tough enough to be a homesteader? Because it's not a lollipop world out there. There's a lot of fantasy about homesteading, and it's just that. In a lot of people's mind, it's fantasies. When they get out and start doing it, they realize, oh my gosh, this is not what we expected. There's a lot of people that dream about the independent lifestyle of being a homesteader. Because it's a very independent lifestyle. You strive for living. A lot of people, it's off the grid. A lot of people, it's just being out of the rat race of the city, being out in the country life and really enjoying life to the fullest of their ability. Now, everybody's capacity at homesteading will be different. So you have to figure out, first of all, what is my capacity to be a homesteader, and to what capacity do I want to be a homesteader. But now, you have to understand, there is one thing that will stop everybody dead in their tracks in homesteading. And this article really nails it in the Backwoodsman Magazine. And that's fear. There is the possibility of fear. A lot of people, you go, well, I don't think I'd be afraid to be a homesteader, but it's one of those things that can haunt you. It literally can haunt you. And I know you're asking the question, well, how in the world is fear going to haunt me with being a homesteader? Well, I'm going to ask a series of questions here. And it's some of the things that this article talks about, and I thought it was real good. I'm going to bring them out, and these are some of the fear factors that hits a lot of people. Now, the first one, one of the things is, will I be a success, or will I be a failure at it? What if I move from the city, move off out in the country, and I start homesteading and I'm a failure? I can't do it. Then what? Oh my gosh, I own this land, I'm in the country, and I failed at it. What do I do? You know, this is one of the things that haunts people in their minds, is the fear of failure. Now, it's a very real, I've seen it happen, and it is extremely real, that particular fear. The other one is, how will I make a living? Because you have to understand, when you get out of the city or suburbs or urban area and you move out to the country life, into remote areas, the high-paying jobs are not out there. Now, my friend, the bills don't go away. So that's one of the things that a lot of people realize when they get out there is, oh my gosh, how am I going to make a living? Because there is not that much money in vegetables and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, the CSAs and all that kind of stuff is, now there are people who make a lot of money at CSAs, but it's not for everybody. Let me tell you, Wanda and I, oh gosh, we've talked about doing CSAs, and we had some friends who tried it and was a complete failure at it. They lost their whole crop. People dumped a lot of money into them. They went out, they put in irrigation systems, they've done all these things, and then they had a total crop failure. And the people got nothing. And boy, did they have some upset people. You know, so Wanda and I saw that happen, and we were like, you know, no, we're not going. Now, we've never had a total crop failure. But after seeing what happened to our friends, we're like, man, I don't know. We just don't want to do this. We got to look at doing something different. You know, the old adage is, on a homestead, you will do about 6 jobs to make the money of 1 job. You know, so you'll sell eggs, you'll sell vegetables, you'll sell animals, you'll sell all these type of things. You'll sell your labor, you'll sell different things to different people. And as a result, you'll make enough money as you normally would probably own just 1 job if you was working in the city. So, I mean, you've got to be diversified on a homestead. Now, one of the things that stops more people dead in their tracks at homesteading is over-planning. That is one of the biggest issues I've seen. I have people call me all the time. They're talking to me, Danny, what about this? What do I do about that? You know, and I tell people, look, you're overshooting your goals. You know, you're over-planning. You're wanting this big, monstrous homestead, and you're wanting it all at once. And the bottom line is, you don't get there that way. You get there by taking baby steps. You set short-term goals. You reach out for those short-term goals, because if you set too many long-term goals and you don't reach them, you become discouraged and you mess around and you get yourself in, you just get in trouble. You know, you get depressed, you get discouraged. You're like, man, why am I doing this? You know, and you end up, most people end up selling a homestead, or you'll see a lot of people go, oh, we got to take a break. Well, my friend, you don't take breaks from homesteading. If you're a real homesteader, you don't take breaks. You know, now, I like what Mother Earth News is doing. Mother Earth News has come out with a new saying for people. Now, for a while, a lot of people call hobby farmers. But Mother Earth News has come out with a saying that I really like, and it's called farmsteaders. They're people who are a mixture between farming and homesteading. They're not actual homesteaders. They're not actually farmers, but they're farmsteaders. And I really like that word, because I think it really portrays a lot of people. Now, you've got your true homesteaders, you've got people who are hobby farmers, and you've got people who are farmsteaders. these are things that I've noticed. A lot of people who've come here to visit, and maybe they've spent some time here with us, when they get ready to go home, they look at me and go, you know, I thought I was a homesteader till I came here. And now I realize I'm really just a hobby farmer. And I need to rethink what I'm doing, because I am in no way a homesteader, you know, because it is intensive labor. Like I told y'all, Wanda and I get up around 5 o'clock in the morning, or I do, and I fix breakfast and get Wanda up about 5:30. You know, we'll eat breakfast, and we're out the door usually, depending on the time of the year, between 6 and 6:30. In the summertime, we're out the door before 5:30, but in the wintertime, it's more like 6:30 to 7, you know, because of daylight changing. But then, and we work until we can't. You know, now it gets up in the heat of the day, like today right now, it's probably close to 100, and I think the heat index is like 106 right now. You know, I'm not going to get out there in that kind of heat, and because I can't. And I used to, I could, but I can't anymore. So what we do is we move inside, and we start doing things like canning and different things like that we need to do, or I'll do woodworking projects, and then I'll move inside and I'll do things like wood burning and stuff like that in the coolness and during the middle of the day. But then you have those people that talk about homesteading, and you'll know who they are, because at work or neighbors or whatever, they're always, well, you know, when I get the money, you know, boy, I'm gonna start my homestead, or when things get better, I'm gonna start a homestead. And they always talk about, you know, starting a homestead. They're these kind of people that are they're all talk and they're no action, because you can go back 5 years later and still they're sitting there, boy, I can't wait till I get to the point where I can start a homestead, you know, and all this kind of stuff. They're dreamers. They never really get there. And they have good intentions, but they're just not made of what it takes to be a homesteader. They're always talking about it, and you can go back 10 years later, and a lot of them are very sad people at that time, because they realize that they should have went on out and made that leap and done it. Now, a lot of people go, well, you know, we're just not financially able to do that right now. You know, you own all this land. Well, I'm going to back up here. I may make some people mad, I don't know. But I'm just going to be plain and candid, because on Porch Time, that's what I do. At one point, I owned almost 40 acres. And let me tell you something. When I bought this land, I was making about $200 a week. And my friends, my notes was outrageous. You know, they were for 15 years at that time. I had notes on some of this place. Now, my notes were, you know, were more, I didn't break my daddy's rule that he taught me, but I brought it to the hilt. My notes were right at $200 a month, and I was making $100 and something, or right at $200 a week, and my notes were $200 and something a month. I took a leap of faith. You know, and it paid off, because actually I got a break in life, and I made a little bit more money, and I was able to pay it off in like 7 years instead of 15 years. But the ratio was based on pay scale. You know, people nowadays go, well, man, my land's costing me $1,500 a month, and I make $1,500 a week. Well, that's the same scenario that I was in. You can't, if you sit back, it's like having children. Me and Wanda talked about this the other day. It's like having children. If you wait till you can afford them, you'll probably never have them. You know, so at some point, whether it's me or you or my forefathers or your forefathers, at some point, somebody had to take a leap of faith and just jump out there and say, look, I'm going to buy this land, and just, if I can't pay for it, I just can't pay for it. It doesn't matter. If you can't pay for it, then you know what? Let them have it back. It's not the end of the world. You've got to know in your own mind that you tried. You don't want to go through life and get to the end of your life and be older like I am and look back and go, man, if I'd have only, how do I know if I could have paid for it? I never took that leap. So I'm telling you, don't sink yourself so deep in debt that you know you're not going to ever get out of it. But my friend, don't look at people who own stuff and say, well, they just hit it lucky. No, at some point, somebody in their life or their family had to bite the bullet and struggle and pay for something. And that's what it's all about. That's what makes you appreciate what you have. A lot of people go, well, I'm saving money. I want to pay cash for my place. Well, paying cash for a place is a fantasy dream. Now, some people are able to do it, but I can sit here and name person after person who sit back and waited to pay cash for their place. And when they got the money and was able to retire, they died 2 or 3 years later. They never really enjoyed their place. So what good did it do them? It's a fantasy dream about paying cash for something. I'm telling you, I have never paid cash for very many things up front in my life until here recently. And I just borrowed the money, bit the bullet, paid the notes, and paid it off. And I worked harder, and I used wisdom in paying for it. I paid weekly instead of monthly. Banks don't like that, but I did it. And I paid my stuff off way ahead of time. Every time I paid one note, I usually paid 1 or 2 on the principal, on the end. I only do amortized loans. So it helped me get onto my homestead. It helped me to get through things in life a lot faster by doing those particular things. Now, if you're going to start a homestead, you've got to have the right mindset. If you don't have the right mindset to become a homesteader, you've already failed. Because it takes the right mindset to be successful at homesteading. Having the right mindset and dedication and motivation are some of the key skills that you need. A lot of people are more interested in learning, well, how do I do this or how do I do that? No, let me tell you something. Before you learn how to do anything, you've got to have motivation. You've got to have dedication. You've got to have the right mindset, or you will fail. If you don't have those, you've already set up yourself a formula for failure. When you become to the point where you want to start looking for a piece of property to homestead or to purchase, make sure you find something that you can afford. Because, my friend, the bottom line is this: if you don't own it, you can't control it. And I learned that very young in life. I had a very good teacher. I had a man who was extremely wealthy who actually taught me a lot about things. And he told me, he said, Danny, don't ever be where you don't own what you have. He said, because whatever it takes, if you have to let everything else in your life go to pay for what you have so you can own it. Because if you own it, you can control it. And I took that advice. This magazine, the Backwoodsman, gives that same exact advice. And I thought that was interesting. That's why this article kind of struck home with me so well, is because I saw the very same advice given there that this elderly gentleman that was very wealthy gave me at a particular point in my life. Now, electricity, if you go to purchasing a homestead, electricity is one of those, is probably going to be one of the first obstacles that you're going to face. Especially if you buy a remote piece of property. Now, you get this remote piece of property, it may be that it's where you can't get electricity. Now, right now, I have some really dear friends of mine that are homesteaders. Their land is so far out in the country that it would cost them like maybe $20,000 or $30,000 to have electricity ran out there. Well, that's just not feasible. I know several people who it would cost a fortune to have electricity ran out to their homestead, and it's just not feasible. So they have to be off-grid. And one of the first things you're going to learn when you're off-grid, according to what they've told me, now I'm going off of what the information I get from my friends, okay, because this is real time. The first obstacle they face is when they got to their homestead and they got ready to do something, and they needed to use a skill saw or some other power tool, they didn't have any electricity. So then you got to look at generators, you know, solar panels. You got to start thinking outside the box. Okay, how am I going to have electricity? Because you've got to have it unless you're going to use a handsaw or a chainsaw or something like that, battery powered stuff, you know what I mean? But you still got to have the means to charge them. You got to have an inverter or converters hooked up to vehicles to run the vehicles. You're going to burn gas in order to charge these things. I mean, you're going to always pay somebody to have electricity of some sort. And even if it's nothing but just to charge a cell phone, you got to buy a solar panel, so you had to pay somebody to do it. So electricity is one of the biggest obstacles that a lot of people face when they start buying a homestead and looking, especially if it's remote. You know, living off the grid is not for everybody. Let's just go ahead and say that. There are those who can do it. There are those who love doing it. There are those who cannot do it. But living off the grid, I will say this, it has its advantages. When you live off the grid, you don't have electric bills, you don't have all these other notes that you have to pay. And what it does is it frees you up to be able to save money, to be able to do projects and infrastructure on your homestead. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be off grid permanently, but you could be off grid for, say, maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 years, and if it becomes a way of lifestyle for you and you want to do it the rest of your life, then hey, thumbs up to you. I give everybody who's truly off grid, I give them a thumbs up, and I say, you know what, you're tough. You're some tough people. But a lot of people live off grid for 4 to 5 years, and what it does is it frees them up from having to pay power bills and all this kind of stuff, and they're able to save their money and put it into a house that they're building on their property there. And you know what? They get them a home built. They get like a little 2 or 3 bedroom little house built, cabin or whatever. And once it's paid for, they've already pre-wired it. And you know, they can hook up to the grid afterwards. And because they've learned to live off grid, they've also learned to live with actually no money at all, hardly, in a grid system. And I'll give you a prime example. One of them was Boss to the Swamp. You know, I was talking to JC one time on one of my chats, and he was saying that that he had electricity in his cabin, but his total year for the power bill wasn't but $300-something for a whole year's worth of electricity, because he was wise. He had learned to live off grid so well that he didn't really use that much electricity, even though he was hooked to the grid. You know, so you don't have to not be hooked to the grid to be a homesteader. You know, and look guys, these are just some things. I read this article and I thought I'd throw it out there to you. I thought it was extremely interesting. You know, it's a good magazine. The Backwoodsman's a real great magazine. It's got some good articles in it every now and then like this. And I thought that some of the information that they shared there, it was some of the same exact information I've been trying to put out. I get criticized, you know, a lot of times for saying what I say, but guys, look, it's the bottom line. I went through it. There's lots of other people went through it. We've all had to suffer our days of paying for something. Yeah, it's easy to sit back and say, I'm going to save my money until I can pay cash, but the bottom line is this. Land don't get cheaper. Everything keeps inching upward. You know, when I first bought my first piece of property when I was 20-something years old, it was $700 an acre. It's $7,000 an acre where I'm at now and up. You know, depending on if you're rural, it's 7. If you're closer to town, you know, 10, 15, 20. If I'd have waited all these years saving my money to say I'm going to pay cash for a homestead, then I'd be screwed. Because 1 acre of land back then, you know, I could buy 10 acres of land back then for what 1 acre would cost me now. So sometimes it pays to just go ahead and borrow the money, buy the land while it's cheap, and just go ahead and get on to it, and then, you know, try to pay for it, rather than trying to wait and then having less when you get older. So that's going to be it for Porch Time today. I don't want to keep going because it's extremely hot out here. I'm about to burn up. And I just wanted to share this with y'all about homesteading. You know, are you tough enough? Because it takes a special breed of person to be a homesteader. We love y'all. Thank you for watching Porch Time. Thank you from Deep South Homestead.